All right, welcome to Game Creation Organization 2017 and 2018.
Yeah!
Whoa! All right, that's actually a little better than I was expecting. My name is Tyler Russ. I'm the president of this organization. This is actually my final year here, so we gotta make this year awesome. Just show of hands. How many of you are already planning on sticking with us for the whole year? All right. How many of you aren't sure or just checking us out? And how many of you got dragged here by a friend or sibling and can't wait to leave? All right, that's good. We actually had someone last year.
Oh yeah.
It's very good. I ended up sticking for most of the year. All right, so this kickoff can be a little bit of a death by PowerPoint, so I'm going to try and keep this as interesting as possible, and I'm going to give you guys all a chance to speak and introduce yourself too. If you have any questions, just ask immediately. Just interrupt me. I don't care. Otherwise, I'm just there. I haven't really planned like question time in this. You just ask me right away. Keep it interactive. Keep it engaged. And also, do you guys actually put the sign-in sheet up?
I got this. Look, this is 2 sheets, and I have a pen, so I can...
You forgot the binder, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
That makes sense. All right. Anyways, we're just going to pass around a sign-in sheet. Just sign your name, and then if you want, you can add, if you're not on the mailing list already, you can add your email to that, and if you want text reminders, you can add to that. Otherwise, let's move on while he's doing that. So, this is our mission statement. Design and create video games to demonstrate that collaboration can bring a vision to reality. You'll notice I've highlighted the word collaboration, and that is key to what our organization is about. And we're going to teach you how to collaborate and make something bigger than you guys could ever achieve on your own. So, brief history of GCO. We were founded in 2013. I'm actually the last remaining founder of the organization. However, there's going to be another who will hopefully be returning this year. He's in South Korea right now. He had to do military service, and he's hoping he can get back on the visa, but now with Donald Trump in office, that's kind of sketchy. So basically our organization started with Nintendo DS homebrew. I'll explain where that came from later on. We switched to Unity in 2015. Smart choice. And we started our long-term project last year. We're still a fairly new organization. This is only our 5th year. So we've got a few things organized now. We've learned a lot, but there's going to be a couple of things that we don't have figured out yet. So we're open ears. If you've got feedback, let us know. And we're just constantly looking to make ourselves better as a group. So GCO is pretty unique. First off, we make video games. That's cool, right?
Yes!
Woo! All right. Second, we teach you things that you won't learn in classes. Computer science majors, do not wait for the game programming sequence to start doing game programming with us.
Very true.
You will learn a lot more. You will get more hands-on working with actual like art assets, doing more sophisticated game design than just doing a Galactica clone or something like that, or Space Invaders, whatever. That's all they do in that class. And you get to work with cutting-edge technology. And I'm serious when we say cutting edge. We're working with the same industry tools that AAA developers use. Also, we are dedicated. Most of our meetings start at 5 p.m. and they go as long as people stay, which used to only be for an hour and a half, and last year these guys decided to start staying until like 10 p.m. and on the average. One time it went till 3 a.m. I was asleep.
Yeah, we pulled a couple benders.
Obviously, you do not have to stay for the whole time. But we're around, and if you want to have fun and just enjoy Friday night making games for a couple hours straight, that's what our organization's about. And we do it because it's fun and rewarding. Also, we have no treasury because we don't need it. There are no dues for this organization. The only financial involvement you might have is there might be a couple of events where we just kind of pull together just a little bit just to cover food or something, or food during meetings.
Yeah.
That's about it. Everything else is we use free software, free tools, free pretty much everything, and it works. We're also kind of a social life tailored for geeks. There's a reason why we do these meetings on Friday nights. One is that you don't have to worry about homework because you have the full weekend, so you can just focus on working on a game. But also, we like to hang out outside of meetings all the time, playing games and such. And for all of you who are new, that might seem really intimidating at first, but once you stick around, you'll get to know everybody. And it's a super fun experience. Not an experience most geeky people find in college, so it's really unique in that regard. And this is what we do on Fridays. Oh yeah, there's also a Discord server, so that's also kind of a thing. That's
if you're interested, you have your email or something on one of the sheets over there, and I can send you a link.
Yep, if you are around tomorrow, we'll also be getting you onto the Discord server then. So, got some questions for everyone, and this is where we're gonna just take rounds here. And basically, it's just basic questions, just name, year, basic things about yourself. We'll be doing a second one of these, so everybody will get a chance to speak twice. The camera's still gonna be rolling, but this is not going to go on the YouTube video, so don't worry about that. We might just hold the footage for our own reference, but you don't have to worry about going online or anything, unless you want to. All right, I will start. So again, my name is Tyler. This is actually my 5th year here at SCSU because I am a EE major, electrical engineering major, getting a computer science minor. I've got both of those pretty much figured out now. This is just a light semester to finish up senior design and whatnot. I live right behind Walmart in some of the apartments back there. Couple, I know he also lives with me, so there's going to be some events where you might get the opportunity to come visit us over there. Unique hobby of mine is that when I'm not doing game development and type stuff, I'm writing. I do a lot of fiction writing. Weird fact about me, I have double jointed thumbs. And that question really doesn't apply to me because I kind of co-founded the group. All right, and do we want to start from, we'll start from the front, I think. Awesome, thank you everyone. We're going to move on now. So, next thing to think about for the next time we go through this is we're going to cover some slides about kind of different areas that you can specialize in, and just think what interests you. And you don't have to pick just one, but just think in advance, just what things you're interested in. So, this is our targets. So we're using Unity 2017, which will become 2018 once 2018 comes around. We're just always using pretty much the latest version. Our target is typically high-end, mid-range to high-end PCs and consoles. So we tend to do a lot of 3D graphics, try and get as close to AA, even AAA as we can. That's hard to do, but it's a lot of fun, so we do it anyways. Our art style is I say various because we have a way of incorporating a ton of different art styles into our project. I'll add more details to that later. All of our programming, for the most part, is like C#, using an event-driven style, which C# is kind of like the golden child between C++ and Java. So if you know one of those, it'll be easy. And then the event-driven philosophies, we'll kind of explain that to you. It's super powerful and super easy. All right, common misconceptions about game development. First, 2D is easier than 3D. The truth is that 3D is much more friendly to people who are non-artists. Obviously, we still need artists for 3D, but when you do 2D, everything on the screen is completely dependent on the 2D artist, whereas in 3D, you can actually have people who aren't skilled at drawing be able to do stuff. Second, if you can't program or draw, you're useless. That's obviously not true, because 80% of game development these days is all about using software tools. No need to actually write a line of code, no need to know how to actually draw intricate details on a graphics tablet. All you need to be able to do is drag and drop pieces. Of course, if you are skilled in programming or art, that's extra beneficial because you can do a lot more with that, but it's not necessary. And then the age-old debate, Unity versus Unreal. This is kind of a joke, but there are things Unity can do to look better than Unreal. It's just not as easy to do immediately out of the box. Hello, Mitchell. The actual truth is that both are great. Unity serves our needs better. If you've got more questions as far as why we picked that and the debates that went on to it, I can give you a full analysis later. It's a really interesting topic. All right, so GCO, we kind of have our three teams, and most of you will probably be involved in more than one of these teams. In fact, we encourage it. However, there may be some activities where we need to split up by the teams, and so for that particular activity, you get to pick which team you're going to be on for that day, or even for that quick session, because sometimes we switch it up more than once during a meeting. So development is typically our game logic, so physics, level design from a difficulty standpoint, and just some of the programming involved in that. Design is typically the aesthetics and the immersion concept, so making things look good, sound good, feel like you're in the game type of thing. And then communications is essentially what ties the two together as well as orchestrates all of our events and other ongoings. Team development, you'll notice that there's a programming section, but there's also a non-programming section. You can be part of team development and not write a single line of code. If you are interested in programming, these are some of the things that you might be working on. Notice that some of it is like working on the game itself, and some of it is creating tools and systems for other people to use. Non-programming, there's a ton of level design, there's physics, there's mathematical calculations, there's also just orchestrating the animation state machine, so you get to work with the design team and kind of coordinate that. The UI layout, that would typically be a design thing, but you also have to make it functional. Design team is probably more what you would expect. It's going to have everything from your concept art to textures to models to 2D graphics, all your props, lighting, sound, effects, voices, voice acting, cinematics. We've got a ton of different stuff going on with that. And then our communications team is probably the everybody's least favorite team, but typically because it's mostly more aimed towards the extroverts, and a lot of people who are interested in video games and the geeks and like making video games aren't really into that. So if you are interested in any one of these things, please get involved in them. You'll have a ton of fun with them because you'll basically be like the person in charge of whatever that is. Some of this stuff is like coordinating like workflow management, just leading discussions. But then there's also like the advertising, posters, media stuff. And then we have like YouTube, Twitch, if you want to stream and want to get involved in that. Doing promotionals, we do tournaments, like fighting game tournaments. And so if you want to be a part of like hosting those, like that's part of this. A big thing though that's new this year is photography. Now normally you might be thinking, oh, it's just photography of the meetings. No, it's not just that. We can actually take photos of the real world, and if you take enough photos from enough different angles, we can completely build a 3D model off of it entirely in software with all the textures and everything, make it look super realistic and make it respond to dynamic lighting in the game. It's something called photogrammetry workflow, and it's something new that we're going to be introducing to our group this year. If you don't understand any of that, don't worry. It'll make much more sense later down the line. Just thought I'd throw that out there. If you're interested in photography, if you got a super sweet camera, you can contribute to art more than even some of the artists might be able to, which is kind of a cool concept. All right, so again, just repeat your name just so that people get it burned into their memory. If you've got any prior game dev experience, just let us know. If you don't, that's fine. And then just kind of tell us like which of the teams you're kind of interested in, what like areas. If you need me to go back to a slide, just let me know, I'll go back. And then everybody's favorite question, what's your favorite game, series, or franchise? You get to pick one total of one of the three. All right. We're going to skip the executive members on this for the sake of, because all the exec members are going to introduce that with their presentations. So I believe we will start with, all right, what we are going to do next is introduce our executive members, starting with our Director of Public Relations, Jay.
Let me get up front here, hold on. I should have probably just leaned over the table in my usual fashion, but I decided to make a good impression on y'all. Hello! I'm Jay, Director of Public Relations, so outward communications, that is my jam. Just hit this. Like I said, my name is Jay, but I will respond to green or T for whatever reason. If you join the Discord, you'll probably figure some of that out, but yeah. This is my third year with the club. I've been in the club since I was a freshman. Junior year production major. I was previously the director of design for about half a semester because our director of design at the time left, and we were just like, oh, well, now what do we do? So I came on as kind of director of design the spring semester, and yeah. And this is kind of why I am the PR director. I do a lot of stuff with games that's like streaming and making videos and stuff, so any videos that go up on the GCO YouTube or anything that occurs on the GCO Twitch, that is my doing. Fun fact, we have the GCO Twitch because of me. It all goes back to a Metal Gear Solid 5 stream that we did at about midnight on my birthday. That was pretty wild. Memes and jokes aside, I grew up on a dairy farm in southeastern Minnesota, and this is where kind of my game dev experience starts, which is kind of funny. Me and my brother got into a little game called Farming Simulator, and I decided I wanted to make my own mods. So I did, and that started in the 2009 edition. The 2011 edition, I was the only person on the main English-speaking forum that could get the cows to work properly, so that was pretty cool, and I was maybe 12 or 13 at the time. I, in general, just really love video games. They've always kind of been a consistent thing with me. My top ones right now, Splatoon 2, playing that semi-competitively. Super Mario Galaxy is still my favorite single player experience. Harvest Moon, just because, you know, it's a farming game, it's my homesickness cure. And Pokemon in general, I really like it. And same for the current meta, the competitive format is probably one of my favorite things about the game. I'm your main texture artist. I operate things like Substance, hoping to get rid of that real soon though. But yeah, I am responsible for texturing most of the models, as well as teaching people how to texture those models with the software. I'm also someone got okay at art. That's something I drew a little recently. Alright, that it?
Yep.
Yes. Evan, you're up.
My turn. So much fun speaking in front of people. It's not. So I'm Alex again. As you can see, I'm the Director of Communications. And I'm going to be reading off my slides because I've forgotten what I wrote. I have a lot of theater experience. I've been in a lot of productions, so I have a lot of that experience to draw on for game design. It can be very helpful sometimes. Other times it's kind of irrelevant, but you know. I heavily prefer story-driven RPGs. Some of my favorite games are Final Fantasy VII, the Kingdom Hearts franchise, Jak and Daxter, Dark Cloud, Sly Cooper, that kind of thing. Feel free to ask me anything about 3D modeling. I'll try to help. I've been working with Blender for a while now. I'm pretty comfortable with most of the Blender workflows. And I'm trying to pick up rigging as well. So hopefully if you're trying to rig so you can get stuff ready for animation, I can kind of help out there. I'll try to be involved as much as I can in everything. Something about game design is you never really stop learning. There's always something more you can learn about game design and development. And really, you can't get what you put into it back out again. So really, if you want to like learn a lot in this group, you have to be willing to invest something into it. If you just put your time in, show up, and then leave without doing anything, you're probably not going to learn a whole lot. But if you like actually sit down and like work with people, or you know, just try and like learn things, you'll probably learn a fair amount just by being here and working on stuff. And that relates to this point. Game development is related to everything, and everything is related to game development. You never know when you have some weird bit of knowledge or some weird skill that happens to somehow actually apply to game development. For instance, you could have some totally weird skill, like maybe you know how to juggle, and you're like, how does juggling apply to game development? I don't know. So let's think about it. Okay, let's say you're animating a character, and they're a clown or something. You have to make him juggle. What does juggling look like? How does that work? You never know when these things are going to be useful, so just learn as much as you can about everything, because you never know when it'll be useful. And that goes for everything, I think. Knowledge is really important. For collaboration tools, Discord is what we use for most of our communication. It's the best way to get a hold of most of us, share code snippets and share links and images. We also just like to hang out on there, so make sure you get signed up with that. We use bots to store all our game assets, models, textures, music, art, everything. I think it's unlimited, right, on bots? Yeah. So we have like a ton of storage on there. We filled up a number of gigabytes of data there. And we will be using GitHub. That's going to have the main project, and we're going to be using its version control, right?
Yep, I'll explain that more later.
Good. I'm not sure how close we are to having that fully implemented. That's why it's in red, but we will be using that at some point. So I just wanted to like make everyone aware of these. But then I'll hand it over to you.
You know, on the one hand, I'm disappointed we didn't get more new people showed up, but on the other hand, I'm sort of glad because I'm really bad about speaking in front of people, so the smaller group makes it a little bit easier for me to not hyperventilate. So, I'm Joe. Wow, that's what you chose for my background. Okay, well, my name is Joseph Shriver, but you can call me Joe. Or, you know, you can use any of my many nicknames that I've collected over the years. I've got many nicknames on Discord. I go by Naoki. I also use Hydra a lot. The nickname that I'm couple of friends have started trying to get built for me as Finger Guns McGee. So, inside GCO, I function as the director of design. I got elected to the position at the end of last semester, taking over for Jay. And mostly what I'm going to be here for is to just sort of try and keep the design team, the design work flowing, keep everything working smoothly together. I do have sort of a mixed background when it comes to using computers. A lot of my extended family, like my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, were into computer stuff, but my mom, who I grew up with, never really got into it. So like I didn't really start to learn about computers and things like that until, gosh, I was already like 22, 23 years old. And then I just started getting into online things, started learning how to use the software. Been trying to teach myself a lot of things ever since we were talking about it earlier on the last icebreaker. My previous game development experience prior to joining GCO was I had a RPG Maker VXAce, which is a software you can purchase. I mean, it's not free and it's actually on sale now, but you can use it to make little 2D sprite RPGs. That's pretty much the extent of my experience before I got here, but I've been learning a lot since then. Outside of GCO, I tend to do a little bit of everything. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm sort of into teaching myself new things. Been trying to teach myself blacksmithing for the past couple of years. I'm actually trying to start up a blacksmithing woodworking shop where like I will make things, craft things for people and sell them. Like I said, I'm a computer sciences major, emphasis on video game design. Didn't really work with computers much before that, but I'm trying to learn how to do the actual computer side of things too. I don't want to be just on the creative side. I want to be the guy on the team that's well-rounded and can help everyone out. Pretty much everything that's on this slide is stuff that I covered in the first icebreaker, but I mean, pretty much any sort of creative thing I like to do. I draw, I write, I like to watch YouTube videos about tutorials. So, that's me. And I think next is Mitchell. Yes.
Hello, I'm Mitchell, Vice President, also the Director of Development. We got a fancy setup here. I was late because I had class in the room that this was supposed to be in, but I'm oblivious to how things work, so I didn't. Anyway, I'll just move on. So I'm going to break some ice here, and it's super effective. So I'm Mitchell, Mitch, or Mitchell, either will work. Last name Petit. I always say there is an E at the end, but it's invisible. So this is my third year with the club. So other than some small stuff here and there that I've done throughout the years, this is really my only game dev experience. So I came into this pretty new and have learned a lot. That seems to be a big theme. So I work with the development team, obviously, but as vice president, I also work amongst all the teams, making sure things are running smoothly, and also act as president in Tyler's absence. To answer that last question, in that icebreaker, Super Mario World by default is my favorite game because I'm pretty sure it's the one that got me into games in general. So that just wins. So let's see. Are there animations added to this now? I don't remember.
You would have added them.
Okay, so I think something happened to my slide, unfortunately. Or I just forgot. Anyway,
Weird. You can look very
So-
closely down there.
anyway, oh, it's there. I don't remember that. Okay, so 3 points about me. This is the first one. Sometimes I get into go baby go mode. That's where I talk real fast and I sound real rude, and I'm not really trying to be fast or rude. I just try and get things moving along. So if that happens, and I say, can you do this? And you say, yeah. No, I mean it. Can you do it? Yes. Great. And I'm not trying to be that way. It's just how things are to keep things moving. Another thing about me is you can ask me anything you want. I don't judge, I don't remember, and I don't hold grudges. Also, I don't know a lot, but I do know who knows things, so I can direct you to someone who might know. So you can always feel free to ask me anything. Also, I like to delegate and not over-assign. So if I say, hey, can you do this? It's not saying that I'm trying to put a bunch of work on you. It's that I want to make sure tasks are happening, things are moving throughout the entirety of the club. So, and this will come especially in development. If you can't do something, or you need extra help, or you need extra time, or you're just not sure, you can ask me, and we'll figure things out. It's not that I don't want to pressure anybody. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mitchell. And last is me. I'm the president. Let's have a little fun here. How many of you play simulation games, personality games, or have tampered with that in the past, or had a girlfriend who tampered with that in the past? All right. Does anyone want to give your best guess at this?
And your personality.
Yes.
I'll give you a hint. I don't know. I'll give you another hint. It's not what you think it is.
See, I wish I should know and I should be able to put this into words since I live with you, but yeah.
Well,
I'm terrible at words.
I mean, I would say, I kind of know what the actual slide is supposed to say, but I would say you have the personality type of like an upper level high school math teacher.
What?
okay.
You like to gesture with your hands like this.
Yeah, I do. I do that. Anyways, how many of you were expecting this?
What?
Oh yeah, I remember now.
What?
Anyways, so the thing is about me is that I can be very tricky to work with sometimes, and you might hear me be very negative about a lot of things. Trust me, I'm not being negative because I'm just constantly negative and hate life. It's because by looking at things negatively, I find issues and I find ways to optimize. And that's what I'm normally doing. I'm normally planning several weeks in advance. But a lot of people think that I'm just constantly negative, constantly villain-like because of that. I love game development. I absolutely love it. I love collaborating with people. And even when it stresses me out, I still love it. I would rather do it than anything else. I want to help you guys reach your goals. So even though I might have the personality type of a villain, I am not a villain. However, I do have traits of a villain. First off, if I interrupt you, a lot of people get offended if I interrupt them. I am not trying to be rude. I am not trying to overpower you. I am trying almost always to save time and save us from making bad decisions too prematurely. For example, if we're talking and we're going through topics too quickly and we accidentally just not actually come to a conclusion on something, I might interrupt and say, hey, slow down. We actually need to decide this, because if we don't decide this now, then all of a sudden somebody's going to be working next week and they're going to have a question, and then the person who actually knows the answer isn't going to be at the meeting, and then we're kind of screwed. So that's why I like to, I'll interrupt to make sure that we get everything covered that we need to get covered. Also, there's always a person who has this great new idea, and they've got all in their head, they're like super excited, and they start telling everybody, and everybody else gets excited, because it's a great idea. But the idea takes about like 10 minutes to explain, but maybe by the end of the 10 minutes, people realize, it only takes one person to realize, hey, what's going on there? And then they're like, oh shoot, this idea doesn't work with what we've already got. However, when I'm listening to an idea, usually within the first 30 seconds or so, I've already figured out if it's going to overwrite 2 weeks of work that we did, has going to give a character conflicting personality traits, and introduce a plot hole. That's just how I work. So I might interrupt you early on when you're discussing that idea and bring up some concerns. just so that early you can realize whether or not your idea is still going to work. If it doesn't, that's fine. We'll save it for later. You can save it at the back of your head, maybe make your own game idea off of it. Or sometimes you might actually have answers to the concerns that I bring up. And then, most likely, your idea is genius and we're probably going to use it. I say this from experience. But then the last concern is sometimes an idea is just not relevant. We tend to go on tangents a lot, and sometimes I'm guilty of going on tangents too, but most of the time I try to be the person to break them up and keep them on topic. And sometimes somebody has a great idea, but it's for the wrong problem, and we're not trying to solve that problem yet. So that's the third time I'll interrupt. If I interrupt you and it's like you got a great idea, but like you need time to explain some other things before you can address my issues, please just let me know and I'll let you continue. However, if you overuse this and never actually address my issues, I'm gonna stop letting you get away with that. So don't overuse it, but if it actually lets us reach new good ideas, just let me know. I'm not trying to be rude about this, I'm just trying to save time and keep things moving. And if I'm talking and you see a potential issue, interrupt me. I'm not going to be offended. As rude as it might sound, just interrupt me if I'm not observant of something. I'm the kind of person who's like, I'm not afraid to step on someone's toes if it's going to keep them from falling off a cliff, and I ask that you do the same for me. Does that sound fair to everyone? Cool. All right. Second issue. Sometimes I might say, all right, we need to discuss this, and then all of a sudden I'm going to disappear from the discussion and let you guys discuss. And the reason for that is because you guys might have these ideas that get presented. And this is what typically is going on in my head. So, if I'm saying out of discussion, it's because I don't want to build this until I have all of this from you guys. So I want to include as many of your ideas as possible. So by staying out of discussion, I actually get to include more of your ideas and then tie everything together. Because a lot of people have a hard time being able to see how all the pieces fit together. That's just something that I have a natural talent for, and I want to use that to the group's advantage as much as possible. I am getting better at this though. I am getting more involved in discussions and being able to rearrange things on the fly. A lot of that just happens to come from the type of game that we're making, lends itself to making that a lot easier. But there might still be times when I'll avoid discussions. There might be times where I also have to, like, we decide things and then we have to change things later on. I'm not going to just change things just because it's a new idea. We're only going to change our plans if it gives us stronger links to how things interrelate within our game, or if we need to get around unexpected issues. So the first time we discuss something, make it good. Third thing, if I'm being rude, it is never my intent. And this is just a flaw of mine. I'm probably unaware of it, even if it's totally obvious. Just please tell me, and I'll stop, and then I'll remember to not do it next time. It's just the way I work. I'm terrible at multitasking, so it's probably that I was focusing on one thing and just totally didn't notice my rudeness out of it. Just please, just tell me. Just be straight direct with me. That's all I ask. That doesn't mean, however, that I won't push the group to new challenges. I do want to push you guys while you guys are here. Now, granted, we're not going to be pushing you, like saying, okay, here's the meeting, and now during the weekdays, you need to go finish that. No, everything happens within the meeting. If you want to do stuff out of the meeting, that's fine, but while you're at the meeting, I'm going to push you guys, but if I'm being too rude, just let me know. If I just am rubbing you the wrong way, let me know, and I will figure out a way to stop. Alright, so some actual background about me, and also just some facts about GCO since I've been quite involved with this organization. I started programming in high school, C++ and Java. Coincidentally, C# is kind of the mix of the two. That was not intentional. Basically, by my senior year in high school, I was making Nintendo DS homebrew. Part of it was because I was fascinated by the fact that I could run code on a different system from what I wrote the code on, and the other half was, for some dumb reason, using the default standard libraries in C++ to get graphics working was a pain. And so the first graphics I got working was on homebrew Nintendo DS, which is kind of weird, and there were definitely other solutions out there, but the internet was not giving me any answers, so I just did what looked coolest. So that hobby of mine ended up catching interest when I came to college, and a couple people were like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool! Like, can you teach me how to do this?" And eventually we started talking, like it was just classmates of mine. And eventually enough interest spread where we're just like, you know what? There is no game development organization on this campus. So we started one. That's how GCO was born. So we did the Nintendo DS homebrew type stuff for about 2 years. If you're still interested in the homebrew, feel free to just let me know, and I can give you links and all sorts of resources and stuff. I'm still interested in that, but after 2 years, it just was not working well as an organization. We wanted to do things more modern, do things more open and not as kind of sketchy as homebrew can be. And then one of our members decided to, one day he just showed up with a full working Unity project of the game Pawn. And that was all it took for us to be like, okay, someone else is willing to switch us to a different game, to a different way of working through a game, and so we switched. And then around that time, I also just started clicking in my head from reading tutorials and stuff, how Blender and 3D modeling actually works. I had tried it for several years prior, I could not figure it out, and then all of a sudden it just clicked. And pretty much 2 months later, oh, not that. 2 months later, we did our game jam in June, and that was we tried to make our first 3D game in Unity for our game jam. I did all the 3D modeling and assets and animation for that. So obviously I was picking this up pretty quickly. But this was the first time we were trying to get 3D assets into Unity, and we were doing this in about 48 hours. And the craziest part is, it worked. It blew our minds. And ever since, we've been focusing on 3D development. The following year was my junior year of electrical engineering, which for anybody who actually knows what that's like at SCSU, it's not a year you want to be very active in other organizations. And so I had to step down and kind of let someone else step up, and observed from just a regular member's point of view to kind of see a different perspective and discover our problems that we were having. We didn't really accomplish much that year, but I learned a lot. Then that summer, I got an internship working in Unity for virtual reality. I was doing ArcViz for processing plants on the Oculus Rift and HTC Vive for like drafting purposes and stuff. That was really cool, and I got to learn stuff about Unity to a much higher level than we had ever touched in GCO before. So all that knowledge poured in into last year, when basically I stepped back up again and made a ton of changes, and I think everybody returning to this organization from last year would agree that those changes have made a heck of a difference here at GCO. And then this last summer, I did an internship with OpenGL Embedded Systems Rendering, in which I essentially built my own multi-threaded rendering engine for the company, because they're having frame rate issues. I'm actually still working with that company in a couple hours a week. But yeah, I love rendering type stuff. Which brings me into my interests. I primarily do graphics programming and animation programming. I enjoy making things look amazing and programming on the GPU hardware. That's why I'm EE and not CS, although that can be controversial. I absolutely cannot draw 2D to save my life as badly as I want to. It just does not happen. And it drives me insane, but it's just kind of a fact that I have to deal with. However, when it comes to 3D modeling, I can actually do that, and I can get models to look right, and especially if I've got 2D art to work off of, I will get that model to look really good and animate really good. I enjoy story writing. I do fiction writing, some of it you can actually find online if you know the right terms to search. I also love animating original characters. I cannot do it enough, mostly because I don't have enough original characters to animate. Game mechanics, as much as I love game mechanics and interesting ideas, I've got a weird sense of like what feels right. So I'm gonna leave you guys to figure that out, because you guys probably have a better sense of that to the general populace than I do. I'm weird, and I just accept that. Story of my life, too many projects, too little time. So I'm going to prioritize projects that I can collaborate with other people on. Alright, favorite series is Pokemon. That's what got me into game development. The actual game is Pokemon Colosseum, because it was an unfinished game that had so much more potential, but it was like ahead of the times, but yet it wasn't finished at the same time. There's so much I could talk about that. I'm also doing this thing called Blind Experiment. Last year, guys were laughing at me because I basically told them 6 facts that I knew about Sun and Moon. I had avoided all media about it, and half of them were fake, which they got a kick out of. But basically, I'm planning on doing the same experiment for the new games coming out, so please don't spoil me. However, there's a little bit of twist this year. I want everyone who gets to know me pretty well to help me decide which version and any big early game decisions that I may not be able to predict the consequences of. That was based off of the conclusions I discovered from the last time I did this. Blind experiment type stuff, you learn a lot about game development that you probably did not know about your favorite series. Alright, also if you see this, it correlates to that. You might see those every once in a while associated with me.
It's a funny joke because it's Sun and Moon.
Alright, that's it for our executive members. It is our stretch time. So if you need to run to the bathroom, run to the bathroom.
Literally.
If you need to fill up water bottles, now's your chance. Most of you can just stand up, stretch, get loose, and we're going to be talking about our tools and policies next. So, about a 2 to 3 minute break here, or more, however long you guys need. Typically our directors, we have director of development, director of design, director of communications, and then one of those are also the vice president. And which one varies by year. We do a vote on that. So they primarily focus on a specific team. The one thing that is interesting though about GCO is a lot of people want to learn as much as they can about all the fields of game development and like all the different areas. And we've structured our organization in a way so that people can do that.
Yeah.
And while you can specialize, you might not want to. So, our official tools. First off, Unity. So I've talked about it used to be Unity 5, and then like just this year they switched it to an annual cycle because they were just doing a bunch of iterative releases, which makes sense. It gets us new features sooner and more stable. So just their first release, 2017.1, which is out now, introduced a tool called Timeline, which is basically a like real-time sequencing cinematics tool. It's insanely powerful and so easy. We're gonna have so much fun with that. 2017.2, which is in beta right now, they're doing some particle system upgrade stuff. They've got some custom rendering API that they're releasing and custom script assemblies. A lot of that is super technical, don't worry about it. 2017.3, which will hopefully come out in like November or December, is going to have a new class system. That's going to be fun. And then 2018, we don't really know what to expect yet, except for one thing, which is called the C# job system, which basically allows a lot of math-oriented code to run about 101 times faster. That's a huge jump. Our second tool that we use a lot is Blender. And Blender is kind of that tool where it's first focused on workflow and then the learning curve. Benefit of it is it runs on everything, including potatoes. And once you figure out the basics and how to get it working and kind of get the workflow, it's amazingly powerful and amazingly fast. It's cool software to use that's totally free. Substance Painter and Substance Designer, these are industry standard texturing tools that you can get a free academic license for. However, our primary texture artist here does not like the tools and is looking for alternatives. So if he finds one, we'll probably switch to that unless someone else can figure out this software better than he can. Facebook, we used to use this a lot more, but it's kind of, we used to have like a private group that we would do like posts and discussions for. That's kind of bit rotting in favor of Discord. So if you don't want to do anything with your Facebook, I wouldn't even worry about it anymore. We're pretty much moving to Discord now. Basically, if you're not familiar with what Discord is, it's kind of like a chat app. It's kind of like an alternative to Skype, except it's got a bunch of like different chat channels and different voice channels and much higher quality of everything. And it's designed towards people who are interested in games and game dev and all that stuff. Box is basically a it's almost identical to Dropbox that you might have heard of, except it's meant for enterprises. And as students at SDSU, you guys get free unlimited storage. GCO is either the biggest user of this feature at SDSU or the second biggest. I'm gonna guess we're second biggest because I think Collegiate has a crap ton of photos that they put on Box. But otherwise, we used to use Dropbox. When we switched to Box, we quickly expanded, because with Dropbox we were limited to 2 gigs. When we switched to Box through SDSU, that expanded to 50 gigs real fast. Gave us a lot more freedom. And then GitHub it's a source control solution, so that's where like a lot of our Unity projects are going to live. This is something we're trying new this year. Last year we focused more on our asset pipeline workflow type stuff, and this year we're actually looking into more Unity projects and like getting them more controlled and getting that streamlined. So this is new, still a little work in progress. Hopefully by the time we present this to everybody, the returning members will have everything sorted out. So there's other tools that you'll be free to use, but we may not necessarily support them. Sculptris was a tool that a lot of members liked using at the beginning of last year, except it crashed a lot. So when it worked well. When it crashed, it was not fun. But it's a free tool. There's also things like terrain editors, paint software. We don't specify specific paint software because every artist has their own preference for whether they like Photoshop or SAI or like Clip Studio, or there's so many different things.
Yeah, there's a million.
So we're not gonna force any preference to that. We don't have an end-all be-all solution for music either. If you have an idea of one that you might think will work with our group, we're open to suggestions for that. If you are interested in using like the Autodesk software, that works with Unity. Unity imports it just fine. we're just not officially supporting it. You are welcome to create assets in like Maya or 3ds Max, or get them imported through 3ds Max from like Inventor or Revit, and get them into Unity in an FBX format. Once it's in an FBX and it imports correctly into Unity, we can use it and do everything that we could always do. However, if you have a problem with your model or animation, it's going to be up to you to fix it, or else we'll probably build an alternate in the software that we support, which is Blender. Programming. How many of you in here are programmers or hoping to do programming? All right, it's a few of you. I'll talk about this. So languages, C#, mix of C++ and Java. There's also something in Unity called UnityScript, which is JavaScript-like. Please don't use it.
Isn't it going away anyways?
Yes, it is being deprecated. But it had problems before that, and then I made this slide before that, and then like 2 weeks later, it was like, oh, we're deprecating this now. So I'm like, oh, that's even better. HLSL is the shading language. You might have also heard of, if you've looked into it at all, you might have heard of CG. CG is HLSL is like the mature version of CG. They're the same. CG code compiles in HLSL just fine. Doesn't matter which. Probably if you're looking up share tutorials for Unity, you'll see CG. HLSL is slowly integrating itself in. C++ is supported by Unity, but it's not really recommended. You only want to use it when you need really fast, critical code that doesn't depend on Unity systems. I think we have one use case for that right now for like one of our smaller projects, and that's going to be completely unnecessary once the C# job system comes out, which will beat C++ in those applications. And then, does anybody in here know Python or has experimented with Python?
I do.
All right. The Blender has all of its plugins need to be written in Python, and there's a ton of things in Blender that you can do that don't necessarily translate to Unity. However, if you can write a proper exporter, I know how to write a proper importer to get some of those extra features and pipeline stuff working, so that we can do some crazy stuff like Tress Effects hair and that type of stuff. As far as knowledge goes, typically for programming, if you want to get deep into the programming, you're going to want at least CSC 250 level experience. Everything in Unity, it uses classes, because it's an object-oriented, C# is object-oriented programming, and just all general logic is dependent on that. We also tend to use advanced topics like polymorphism and pub/sub events. We teach pub/sub, so classes don't typically teach this, and like classes don't typically teach like polymorphism until the game programming class. We'll help you with some of these advanced topics, but at least know your CSC 250. If you know some data structures, that can be useful. If you're still in CSC 150 or earlier, we might introduce you to like some programming general concepts, but for the most part, we're going to have you working on like the development side, on the non-programming aspects, get you comfortable with Unity and the user interface and stuff, so that when you do have the knowledge to start diving into the code, you know exactly where the code's coming from and what it's supposed to connect with. Computers. Computers are absolutely necessary to pretty much every meeting. And I'm not talking Android tablets or anything. Those don't run Unity. Maybe if you're just doing 2D art and that's all you do, you can get by with an Android tablet, but for the most part, you want some kind of computer. Blender runs on potatoes, so if you, like, shoot, I don't have a good computer, you'll still be able to be helpful that regard. Unity requires things a little bit stronger, not too much stronger, but if your computer's fairly recent, it can probably run it. Substance Painter requires a 2 GB discrete graphics card, otherwise it might work, it probably won't.
I'd recommend at least 4 gigabytes for your VRAM and a pretty recent graphics chip too, so like NVIDIA Maxwell or one of the more recent AMD things, you know, R9 300s.
Yep. And our full Unity project, especially like the 3D parts of the project, we're building a game targeting computers that are going to have decent graphics, not necessarily amazing, but the problem is that when we're building the game, all the code is unoptimized, so we need even more powerful hardware to actually be able to run the game. So if you want to be able to test the full game, you'll probably want some kind of system with like one of these graphics cards and a quad core or better. Some people will actually bring their desktops to meetings on Friday. You're welcome to do that. Just if you do that, make sure that you have Wi-Fi access. We cannot get you Ethernet. All right, meeting format. Every meeting at 5 o'clock, for the first 15 minutes, it's just kind of like, it's just a social. You social, and then you get your computer set up, wherever we need to do. At 5:15, we start. I typically have slides up with all the news, announcements, any updates that we need to do, and then we typically have some group decisions, discussions, and then eventually we get into like our workshops. This process, it says workshop starts at 6. As we do this a couple of times, that'll get up to like 5:30 as we get faster at doing it. But the first couple of times it'll be new to everybody, and we'll walk you through it step by step. Our workshops. Top 3 are typically what you're going to be seeing the most of. Mostly this semester, there's going to be just a lot of interactive presentations. We're going to be teaching you everything, how to do this, how to do that, how to make a game, make it awesome. Every once in a while, we might come to an interesting point where it's like, shoot, everybody needs to be involved in this really critical decision because it affects everyone. And so we might get a discussion on that. And then, especially next semester, and maybe even late into this semester, we're just going to have a lot of meetings where we just have, here's kind of the things that we want to do, and we just start doing it. Maybe some small teams get together and work on one thing, and you just kind of do whatever you feel like doing. But we get as far as we can. If we get stuck and like don't make a lot of progress for some time on like a certain aspect that's like blocking everything else, we'll do something that I like to call mini jams, where basically I say, hey, you got an hour and a half, pick a partner, and you guys are a bunch of teams, whichever team, and you guys are competing to see who can do the best at this particular thing. And then we'll have like a group vote type thing. And that typically just gets things moving again. At the end of the year, school year next year, we typically have elections. That's pretty straightforward. Release parties, also at the end of the year, sometimes we do them for like a Halloween or Christmas release if we get that far. Probably not going to happen this year, but it might. But we typically have a release party where we bring in a bunch of food and snacks and drinks and stuff, and basically just kind of celebrate like, this is what we made. And then there's the infamous Riddle of Riddles, which is just a complex puzzle challenge that some people really, really enjoy and some people hate, but it's a GCO tradition. Meeting policies. First 15 minutes, you're welcome to play games while people are socializing if you get your computer set up right away. During the news and updates, if the game is going to keep you awake, I don't mind you playing it. However, if you're not responsive to when we're trying to make decisions and stuff, that's going to change, and I'm just going to say no more games. During workshops, please do not play games if you have nothing else to do. If you have nothing else to do, you aren't doing GCO right. The only time you are allowed to play games during the workshops is if you're actually trying to figure out a problem and that game you need to go back to the game and you get a group and you're like, this is how this game does it, maybe we can do something like this. That's the only time we allow it, otherwise we're pretty much not going. Otherwise, if you're involved in the decisions and then you just don't do any work and just play games, then you're not gonna have any say in the decisions anymore. But hopefully that won't be an issue. It wasn't really much of an issue last year, so that's a huge improvement over previous years. If you are bored or lost, please ask one of the execs. We will help you. If the worst thing you could possibly do is just sit around and wait for someone to come to you, just please ask us. We want to make sure everybody has something to do and everybody's excited. In some cases, there might be a problem that you're trying to solve, or something that really interests you, and we might not know. In that case, it is totally fine if you just want to go onto YouTube and watch a bunch of tutorials on how that works. We're totally okay with that. As long as you're involved in game development in some way, that's awesome. Development versus design disagreements. So these teams in the past used to not play very nicely with each other, and so we created a set of policies that resolve pretty much all of these issues. Basically, we had incidents where the game mechanics would ruin the design story because it would give characters conflicting personality traits. They might be really quiet, but they got this fierce, aggressive attack from the development team. We're not allowing any of that. Game mechanics have to follow the design team's stories and characters and character personalities. However, if the mechanics that they propose meet that criterion, the design team has to create the effects and animations and models for whatever the development team designs. So, if the development team creates a weird fire attack for a character who would naturally use fire attacks, the design team can't be like, no, I don't want it to go in a vortex spiral. I want it to be like this big hexagon that just flies forward. No. Design team, you gotta make that vortex. And that might sound kind of harsh and strict, but trust me, it's super casual. It just solves a lot of disagreements, and it's actually becomes really intuitive once we get into that practice. Copyright is a big deal. We want to release our game to the public, and we want recognition, so don't blow it. Our solution to copyright right now is to simply just avoid any possible conflicts with it by just making everything we can ourselves. Stuff on the Unity asset store, if it's free, you are allowed to use it. Otherwise, we can't use it because all of our code is open source. And as far as things from other sites, even if they're free, don't use it because we don't know if they actually came from credible sources or not. Everything from the asset store is verified, free to use. We don't even have to give recognition or everything. We're just allowed to use it. Makes everything super easy. Question?
Yeah. On the subject of using free things, some sources that you can get free things from have copylefting, where instead of the things being private, you just have to give credit to the original user. Are we keeping track of that? If anything like that gets used, are we going to keep track of that for use in the credits section of our game?
We have to. And tracking that is a pain, which is why we're trying to avoid as much of that as possible. If you really want to if you really want to use a free copyleft asset, you need to talk to me directly, and we need to figure out a plan for how you're going to keep track of it and how everybody else is going to keep track of it, because right now we don't have a very clean solution.
So if there's a way around it, that's the preference.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure that was clear for the people.
Alright, this is going to be our second break, if you guys need to take a quick break. Otherwise, next big thing, we're going to talk about the game project, which I think you guys are really going to enjoy. Everything we are doing is absolutely free. However, everything we also produce is something that, everything that we produce within the organization, you guys, when you graduate, are allowed to use for personal projects as long as you don't come back and sue us for having the original assets. And we'll make our license clear on that. So traditions. Text is a little small, I apologize. So we do a summer game jam, typically in the beginning of June or late May. And for a weekend, 48 hours straight, we make a game. Typically, we host the game jam as well. So we decide at the end of the semester like what the theme is going to be. And then people online will actually compete in our game jam. We got this last summer, the theme was colorful combat, and we got a ton of really good entries.
Yeah, we got some really well-made games, and quite honestly, I was impressed with a couple of them. There was one entry that was made in Unreal that completely threw us for a loop and a half, and you almost had to be there or watching the stream to really like appreciate our reaction, but it was amazing.
Yep. Tangents and other trigonometry aside,
I'm more of a sign guy myself.
The game jam, so like we also work on a game during that time. Whether or not we actually enter into like the competition, if we do, it's not a huge deal because like we don't start the design until everybody's there at the location. And everybody who makes a game gets to vote on the best game. But in the past, we typically just have not entered just because we knew the theme in advance. Dakota Game Con. This happens late July, and typically we host a game tournament. Pretty much every summer that we've been hosting the game tournament, we for sure do Pokken because that's really good with the kids. But we also like to do Smash, and we might try and introduce Street Fighter this next time around.
Ooh, really? I didn't even know of our plans to introduce Street Fighter, but I am down. If you couldn't tell by the hat.
Do love making games.
There's the Riddle of Riddles, which I already talked about earlier, but it's essentially a crazy puzzle challenge.
Crazy puddle. Hashtag crazy puddle, get it trending on Twitter.
We have our October and November watch-a-thon, where essentially we all watch a series as a group. 2 years ago, it was Over the Garden Wall. Last year, it was Ruby Volumes 1 through 3.
We could probably do Volume 4 now. But,
And then we also have kind of like different levels of classification for members. All of you who are new, if this is your first or second meeting, you guys are technically like new members right now. In 2 weeks, that's going to change when you guys make your first game in Unity, and then you're just regular members. Veteran members are classified as having a full year of experience and being a part of a game jam, or 2 full years of experience. Our veteran members who are here right now include Mitchell, Jay, Alex. I think that's all who's here right now. And then we don't have any like ceremonies for transitioning. If you have ideas, we're open ears. Out of meeting activities. So remember how I said at the very beginning that GCO also had like social life type stuff? We do every Friday after a meeting, as long as we don't go until 3 a.m., we do a Friday night long play in which we all get together and play a game. And sometimes we record it, sometimes we stream it. Most of the time we just do it for fun. This is also when we would be doing our watch-a-thons, is after the meetings. We also do a monthly fighting game tournament. every third Saturday of the month in the Union from 5 to 10 p.m. Which game it is varies each month. For the month of September, it is Smash 4. So if you guys are interested in being involved in that, that'd be awesome. It's always super fun. There's also other activities that we sometimes do that varies by year. These are some of the ones that we've done in the past. All right, couple slides left. We're almost done. Sorry this is going long. So timeline, tomorrow, if you're around in Stone Town, it's going to be a setup workday where we're going to get you all set up with software and connected to our servers, Box, GitHub, Discord, everything. September 8th is our introduction to Blender, in which we teach you how to model some random monstrosity, and then once you get the hang of that, we'll show you how to model the game sword.
Or if you're Kinnard, something that is definitely not the game sword. We'll have to get that Blender project up to show.
That was an interesting model he came up with.
That's one way to put it.
Alright, September 15th, this is when we do our first Unity game, Fly a Drone. Now I understand not everybody can make this. If you are one of those people, please tell me your schedule and some possible alternate times. I know some people who are not here right now because of band related reasons cannot make this meeting as well. So we are definitely going to be scheduling an alternate time. It's also going to be a time for a couple of you who might not get the project working first try. If maybe your computer crashed or something that we could totally not predict. We'll give you an opportunity for a second shot at this. This Fly a Drone project is a massive kickstart for game development for all of you. It's been designed specifically by GCO members for GCO and to introduce advanced concepts in the most simplest approach possible. We, as GCO, we cannot offer any better workshop than this. This is something that is completely free for you guys. Please make use of it. Especially if you're interested in game development, this will get you way on your way. September 22nd, assuming that we don't use this day also for a second time around for Fly a Drone, this is when we're going to cover our workflow, GitHub, Steamroll. Our Steamroll is our asset workflow pipeline that we developed last year. It'll just basically all our workflows for making games and making things cool. We're just going to explain it all to you then and walk you through it. September 29th, we're going to teach you some more advanced modeling concepts. I typically do box modeling. I'm going to see if we can get somebody to show the sculpting retopo workflow. That would be amazing. Still working on that though. October 6th, this is the 3-day weekend. So we'll still have a meeting. It'll be a work day. I'm probably actually not even going to be at the meeting. I typically have obligations that 3-day weekend. But if you're around, it's a chance to work. October 13th is going to be a more practice time for anybody who's doing the 3D modeling design work, and for anybody else who's familiar enough with programming and wants to get into the Unity API. We're going to be doing an introduction to that. And then October 20th and thereafter, it's just going to be more presentations about texturing and cinematics and animation and all sorts of stuff. We haven't fully scheduled it yet. So, almost done. I've got 5 keys to successful game development. Every project that has gone sour has been because we did one of these things wrong, and I guarantee if you do these 5 things, you will have a game that works. First thing, take initiative. Nothing gets done unless someone starts. You do not learn 3D modeling until you start modeling. You don't learn true game development systems until you program a game. And you don't get to see a new face at GCO unless you start recruiting more students for GCO. So I can only do so much for this organization. Our execs can only do so much for this organization. If you don't be afraid to take charge and make things happen. Second thing, communicate. I had a pretty big, exciting project fail because of communication very recently. So this one by far can, if it's not taking initiative and getting a project started, it's communication that'll kill a project. Don't wait to see me in person to ask questions. Just ask on like Discord or text me or email me. If you guys got the text reminders, you guys have my cell phone number. Fun fact. Don't be just say, hey Tyler at the start, and then I know that you're not like a new member trying to ask questions. It's just someone who's already been and knows that it's me. Just ask away. I'm super I try to respond as fast as I can. I love questions, by the way. There's only 2 cases where people have actually managed to annoy me because of questions. One was that the person ignored all emails that I ever sent out, stayed out of every single group discussion during meeting. They sat in the corner and watched YouTube and play games on their own time. And then all of a sudden, they would be like, I have an idea. And then their idea would be totally off from everything else. And I would say, unfortunately, this doesn't work. And they'd start asking, why? And then they start asking questions about the game that we just discussed and answered. Fortunately, they're not. Fortunately, they're graduated. We don't have to deal with that person. Never do that, please. I don't think this will be a problem, but please don't do that. That was very stressful. The other case is if, like, during meetings or during like a game jam when I'm trying to get things done, I might get a little, like if I'm on a time crunch, I might get a little annoyed if your question doesn't necessarily relate to what we're trying to accomplish. And I'll warn you, no hard feelings. If you do start doing it repeatedly, I might start being like, okay, you know, you're doing this quite a bit. Just, can you please save this for when we actually have time? But for the most part, I love questions. A little bit more, I have a little bit more about communication. So one thing is, if you're really busy, and I see you're really busy, or like if I'm probably not going to ask you to do anything, but if you want me to ask you to do things because that's just the way you schedule things, let me know. And let me know how I can schedule that. I'll do that for you. Also, if like you had said, hey, I'm going to do this and it's going to be done by this time, and then all of a sudden something comes up and you're like, this is not happening, and maybe I might like ask you like, hey, what's the status on this? Just tell me whether or not you're busy and whether or not you're going to be able to like make the next meeting, or if you're not going to be able to do something, so that I know to delegate to someone else so that we can keep things moving. If you just ignore me, I'm going to get very frustrated with you, and I'm not going to stop messaging you and annoying you. If you just tell me right away that you're busy, I'm going to leave you alone.
Did we ever get that dragon model, or did whoever was working on that just kind of disappear? Or
The chicken dragon? It's on box.
Okay. At one point, I know we were going to have like a big dragon for a boss fight, and someone was going to model it, and then I just never heard anything about that.
There's a chicken dragon. I'm not sure if we're going to use it.
Okay.
What was I about to say here?
Something before I really interrupted you.
Obviously, looking at my notes here. Oh, one last thing. If I ask you for like an update or something, and you don't see it until like 12, 24, or even 36 hours later, still respond. I know that's not a thing in some social groups, but for me, it just tells me that you were aware and you were just that busy. If you do not respond that at all for like a week at a time, I might ask you again, and if it's like one of those things where it's just like, oh shoot, I totally saw this and I just forgot, that's fine, I can understand that. But if you're just one of those people who just ignores me when you're busy, and then if it's just too long afterwards, you just never respond, even if you know, that annoys the crap out of me. And it makes it really hard for us to plan. All right, now on to this point. Iteration, iteration, iteration. Nobody gets it right the first try, and everybody gets super frustrated when you worked really hard on something, and then someone else comes along and they say, hey, there's problems here, there's problems here, there's problems here. Can you fix this? That always happens. If that doesn't happen, that typically means either this idea is going so sour that we're just going to completely drop it, or you spent a bunch of time iterating on your own time before you shared it with someone, and you were already iterating. I have never seen someone absolutely nail it first try in which there wasn't something to improve on. And the thing to think about with iteration is it's not about just redoing things, it's about making the final game a better game. I think, and we all want our game to be really good, right?
Yeah. Like the number of times you scrapped just like the height map alone is like, I think we've made a lot of those.
Mm-hmm. Fourth point, dive into the unknown. Sometimes I might not have the answer to the problem, and none of our execs might have the answer to the problem. Feel free to go online, dig through stuff, and learn something, and become an expert. If you become an expert in a certain area, we'll acknowledge that you're the expert and get your advice on that area. It's not like we're super controllable and super like, we recognize true knowledge, and don't be afraid to be a person who has that true knowledge. Dive in. Explore. And last, learn to criticize games from a developer's viewpoint. And what I mean by that is look at a game, look at your favorite games, and start asking, why did the developers make this level design? What were they thinking? Why did they use this mechanic? Is this mechanic similar to other games? What did they change? Was it because, did they remove a feature from a previous iteration because it was too technical and could have caused a lot of problems? Or was it because it was a better design decision? Start thinking about that. Think about the story. Like, did they use these colors because, what are they trying to do with the characters? Are they using the colors to symbolize like a certain character personality? Is there a certain moral with the plot? Why did they animate things this way and not that way? It's one thing to look at a game from like a gameplay perspective and kind of answer these questions, but from a developer's perspective, you kind of know what's involved in this process, and then you can look at these developers as the pros and how are they doing it. And if you can start answering these questions from that perspective, you're going to learn a lot more about game development. And final slide. Plenty of ways to get involved, but our game is always our #1 priority. We'll cancel events if we lose focus of our game, but I don't think that'll happen this year. I think we're pretty good. I think we're all really excited. We want to learn, grow, and collaborate as an organization. It's not just about making awesome games, it's about getting to the point where you guys will graduate with the knowledge to make any game you want, and then it just becomes a matter of time, but you will know all the steps. You won't be like, oh no, how do I do this? You'll know where to get your answers, you'll know how to start, and if you get a team and a really interesting idea, you've got real potential. That's our goal. You'll notice some of our returning members have like personal projects that they're working on. our goal is that by the time all of you graduate, you'll all have like that personal project idea and know how to start it and have the plan and everything. Even if you're not gonna go into game development in industry, it's still something that you can always come back to. And lastly, we want to see our visions in our head become reality. We don't just want to make a game. We want to make the game that we want to play. And we want to see, and we want to live and experience and be excited about. So, if you truly want to learn game dev, you get out what you put in. Some people will treat this organization like a class, and you'll learn what you'll get out from a class, if not more. Some people just like to show up to meetings and just work really hard at the meetings, and then not even worry about GCO outside of meetings, and they still learn a lot too. But that's because it's just about how much you put in is what you get out. If you come to meetings, sit, do nothing, you won't get anything. But we're providing you a ton of information, a ton of opportunities. Use it. And that's it. That's all of the political stuff. Every meeting from here on out is going to be actual game development and showing you all the tools and everything. Thank you guys for all coming. I'm sorry this went super late with all the technical difficulties and tangents and stuff. But I hope you guys have an awesome weekend, and if you are around tomorrow, hope to see you there. Thank you.